Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. And today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Oxford University Press. The title is an interesting one. It's Computer Crimes and Digital Investigations, now in a second edition, and it's been written by Ian Walden. Now let's have a look at the book in a moment. I'll just explain the title for our book review that we have given this particular book. It's over here. A book of reference on crime with a cyberspace filter, now in a new edition, second edition. Let's have a look at the book first of all. Black front cover. There we go, hardback. There is the spine. Nothing much on the back. Looks highly computer type organised, and there's an interesting cover illustration. I don't quite know what that means, but however, the book itself is the important bit. Here it is, 500 odd pages. There is the index at the back. It's by paragraph numbering, so you can find things pretty quickly. There's a very detailed bibliography. This is an important emerging area at the moment. The bibliography runs through for quite a long way at the back. Then there's various appendices, various ACPO guides, and a whole range of other things, conventions on cybercrime directive from the EU. I'm recording this after our decision to withdraw from the European Union, so there may be some changes well on the way in this book amongst other things. There's the front cover. Then there's a preface from Ian to the second edition. 22nd of November 2015 is when he wrote it, and he's dedicated it to his family, and there's a little dedication at the bottom there. Claire, Ben and Reese. Now acknowledgements there, and then after that you've got, and that includes what's in the appendices of course, then you've got the contents section itself, and then running to 7 pages plus the appendices. Then you've got the table of cases, and they're listed. You see how they're structured in by country, because this is very much an international book, so it covers a wide range of different countries. Same with the legislation, and then after that we get into the subject matter itself. Now there are international treaties and conventions also included, and then you've got the actual chapters. Now you'll see with each chapter there is a little index at the beginning which sets out clearly what's in it. And as you can see, you've got paragraph numbering, and you've also got useful footnoting, which you can see again as we get into the actual book itself, comes through quite clearly. And then you've got, as I say, a very substantial amount of work that has gone into this by the author. It's a detailed work. It's not the easiest book in the world to read, but there again, computer crimes and digital investigations are actually very complex. It's not a simple area of law at all. It's a complex area, and one that certainly we do need to have some clear indication of where we are going with the law, because in the future, a classic example being, you get very many smash and grab raids anymore. Very few of those sorts of crimes, because a lot of the crime is centred in these areas. And of course some people don't consider it to be a crime at all. Of course it is, because there are a lot of victims, and it goes against our basic principles. However, let's look about what's actually in the book and what value it will be for the lawyer and practitioner. There appear to be certain lofty members of our profession, including rather astoundingly a few members of the judiciary, who still think cyberspace is something of a space oddity. They should only read this book. It's aimed specifically at the criminal law fraternity, so Ian Walden's Digital Crimes and Digital Investigations will nonetheless be of interest to all lawyers who inevitably will have to deal with high-tech crime issues. In providing an overview of this indubitably vexed subject, this book, now in a new second edition, makes an important contribution to the still relatively scarce body of literature concerning this specialist area of law. The first edition was published, would you believe it, 9 years ago, and I'm recording this in the middle of 2016, so it's a long time on. And then, of course, going back in that time, and in that case, there are still a number of practitioners and judges out there who we think perhaps need a little bit of reminding about what's happened, because the internet has long passed its infancy today. Even then, of course, 9 years ago, it was still very well known, having been in widespread use at the time for at least 10 years. I've certainly been using it now for a few decades, as it's bitten in very much to the later part of my career. Now, this title has been recently published by OUP, and the book does provide an important update, which I think will certainly be welcomed by criminal practitioners. And I'm not trying to give a very detailed, opinionated review here, trying to show what the benefit of the book is, because what we do with all of our reviews is we don't review books that we don't think are very good. There's no point. Our point is that these books that we do review are books that will have some importance for perhaps a relatively narrow area of practice, but nonetheless people need to know of them. Now, as the title indicates, the focus is on computer crime, more commonly referred to as cybercrime. It's a phenomenon facilitated by the ever-developing technologies of computer connectivity, in other words, the internet. It's now ubiquitous and almost instantly available. The internet, in the author's words, has become a key resource of the global economy. It's largely unregulated, except in totalitarian states, and the internet's also become a key resource for associated and assorted criminals and terrorists. And I think that's a very important point to bear in mind, because it's a global matter, and that means immediately where you have rampant problems with the internet in certain areas, not just about sex, but about things like counterfeiting. We will have to make agreements. It doesn't matter whether you're in the EU or out of it. You're still going to have to make agreements with people to decide what is and is not acceptable. And I think that again is something, this is in its infancy in fact, this book, but is very much the sort of problem we're going to be facing in the middle of this century and beyond. Now, the author Ian Walden, who hails from Baker Mackenzie and teaches the LLM course entitled International Cybercrimes and Investigations — I've not actually attended any of those courses — he mentions that the clients with whom he has had dealings have exposed him to issues and insights that are not normally available to academics, and that I think is a great additional plus factor for this book. He's also been a board member of a number of institutions concerned with internet security, particularly on internet safety, so he comes to us with a high pedigree. The book, he says, may be viewed simply as a criminal law text operating as a filter through which we can examine the whys and wherefores of criminal law and policy, and it can be regarded as a computer crime book, or a book on crime with a cyberspace filter. In short, a book which focuses specifically on crime as opposed to other aspects of internet usage, such as contracts, trademarks, domain names and the like. Not, of course, to mention ordinary communications. Of course, there's a bit of an overlap there, but that's a totally separate area from what his particular mission is here. Now, as the author also remarks, it's obvious that computers may play a part in the commission of nearly every form of criminal activity, from fraud to murder. And the subject area is so wide that large chunks of it go beyond the scope of this book. The author therefore turns our attention to problems where computers and networks are involved, either, he says, because the legislation was drafted in an era before such technology was envisaged, or because statutory drafting has failed to be robust enough to appropriately address the use of information technology, computer technologies, ICTs, and their fellow lawyers lies the crux of the problem. This is indeed a massive subject, and those who crave further information on it will find research references aplenty in this book, including the table of cases, which I've outlined earlier, legislation and international treaties and conventions. Please do note the 4 appendices, which are at the back. The book is also, of course, extensively footnoted, and there is a 10-page bibliography. So let me conclude by saying, based on recent developments in digital and current pace, and in the digital and current pace of change, it's anticipated that further editions of this distinguished and accessible work of reference will appear in the future, ideally at more frequent intervals, The publication date is cited at 2016. Of course, things are going to change because of a decision by the people of Britain to leave Europe. So there will, I can see, be quite substantial changes. There's the book again, front, spine and back. And then, as I say, just reminding you, that is the actual index itself, which you can see is quite helpful because it gives a lot of information, and of course it is paragraph numbered. Then you've got the bibliography, which I've mentioned. Just opening the book in the middle. Suspect-derived data. You can see we're entering a very new era. This is addressing the data problems, cyber forensics and criminal procedure. We are definitely entering a very new era for the law involving any form of criminal endeavour, and is much more complex than it was before, which needs, of course, a different way of tackling it. It's also a possible problem area when it comes to actually explaining to members of the jury what these people have got up to, because it's not simple. It's not the way, as I said right at the beginning, a smash and grab raid, which is a straightforward evil criminal act. These are different, and a much different way of actually adducing the evidence therefore unfolds. Anyway, thank you to Ian Walden and OUP very much, and we look forward to a new edition, probably vastly updated, in due course. Thank you to all. Bye bye.